Welcome, welcome. Nice to see you all. I'm wondering if the volume can be up just a tiny bit. Thank you, Jim. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Diana Clark. Happy to be here. So this morning, one of my electronic gizmos decided to stop working. So I went online. Okay, so I'm sure somebody else has this problem. And they recommended, do X, Y, Z. So I go do X, Y, Z. It doesn't work. And then I find a contact for the manufacturer, an email. So I send an email. There's a problem. Again, email back, a little bit surprising, sometime later, of course. Try this. That didn't work. And if that doesn't work, here's a phone number. I call the phone number and they say, try yet one more thing. Here's a third thing. That doesn't work. And then I thought, I think I'm going to give a Dharma talk on patience. You know how sometimes we have these things like, okay, this is something that used to work and then it just doesn't. And somehow they should be able to help me out here. And yeah, so it still doesn't work. They have no idea, and they're kicking it up to somebody or other, and this is how these things are sometimes. So patience. There's this way in which patience, it turns out to be such an integral part of our practice, but often it's not called out specifically. Patience. It is in one of those Buddhist lists. It's in the list of paramis, the perfections. Patience. And part of the way in which we could use it is, the obvious way, and kind of the little scenario that I gave this morning, is when we have this expectation that things should go a certain way and then it just doesn't. That's an obvious way in which to work with patience. But there's also this way in which maybe we haven't even articulated this clearly to ourselves, but we might have this idea that this path of practice, if we're going to have some more freedom and ease, then we have to work and work and work and work. Regular meditation practice, read those Dharma books, go to the meditation sessions, go on retreats, or whatever it is. There's this way in which we might have this idea that it's a big push, as we're trying to shove ourselves into what we think a good Dharma practitioner is. But there's this way in which certainly we need to apply effort and have some energy if we want our life to go a different direction. There's some way in which our lives are like these giant barges or something, right? It's if we want to turn a different direction, it takes a lot of energy and takes time. But there's also a way in which nature has seasons, and so do we. There's sometimes a way in which we feel kind of like disconnected from nature, and we kind of feel like, oh, well, I don't have any seasons. But there's this way in which there's this, we could say, a spring. This way in which maybe there's some new possibilities, enthusiasm, and everything feels kind of exciting and fresh in some kind of way. And then there's summer, in which things have this fruition, and there's a energy and creativity and ideas are flourishing. And then there's fall, where maybe there's some disenchantment. We begin to lose interest, lose some of this enthusiasm, and energy is waning. And then there's often this winter of discontent, perhaps. It's when things don't feel quite as energized. Maybe they even feel a little bit empty. And we might even wonder, will we ever have energy or enthusiasm again? Whether that's for some particular project or whether it's for our life in general. This works on so many different scales, the small scale and the big scale. And so there's this way that just to recognize that this is a natural process, And there's a way that maybe any gardener will tell you, perhaps some of you are gardeners, that whenever we're going to plant seeds or in cycles of growth, requires patience. Patience. It's an integral part of any endeavor that we intend to do. And instead, there might be this way we just feel like, oh, I just have to push harder. Or we think, I must be doing it wrong. Oh yeah, just another indicator of my failure because my enthusiasm hasn't maintained, or this isn't giving me it's not meeting my expectations, it's not giving me the outcomes that I was expecting. So just to say that this path of practice is not only about applying effort, it's also patience. It's time to simply, maybe patiently abide or look on or observe as opposed to always pushing. I've told this story here a few times when on a meditation retreat. This was a long meditation retreat, and the teacher said to me, well, Diana, people like you that are strivers, and I was like, I'm not a striver, but I was such a striver. I ever get these headaches from just like trying so hard to get concentrated and just sit still, with perfect posture. And oh my gosh, I was just exhausting myself. But I just couldn't see it because I had this idea that that was what's required. That's what was needed. But there's this way, if we apply energy and never have patience or don't have patience, we just feel like we have to push more and more, we will overexert ourselves. And it'll be something different than headaches. This is called burnout, right? Which so many people experience. There's this way in which we just get depleted because we feel like there's only this one thing that we have to do is just work harder. And certainly our society kind of like supports this idea that you have to work more and more. And there's this way that we might end up actually wasting energy if we don't take the time sometimes to have some patience, because we might think like, oh, this is taking too long, I'm going to do a shortcut. Even this happened earlier today. I don't know why 101 South was just barely moving, 4 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, maybe 10, I don't know. And I thought on my way here, I thought, this is so perfect, and I'm talking about patience, and here I am. So I don't know what happened. And then I was tempted, I could take this exit, get off. But then I saw, well, those cars, they're not moving either. Okay, I'll stay here. But there's this way in which we often want to take shortcuts. I mean, this is an obvious one, right, with driving. I'm not sure, but I've done this many of times thinking, it'll be faster. I know the back roads. And I'm not the only person that knows the back roads, right? And then just ends up taking so much longer. And I appreciate that the Buddha, he talked about this thousands of years ago. He says, as the wagoner who left the highway, a road with an even surface, and entered upon a rugged path, broods mournfully with a broken axle. Right, so he even pointed to this idea that we want to get places quicker, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, but sometimes we end up with a broken axle, which we might say is this, maybe just giving up entirely, or things being worse than how they were. We feel completely discouraged or distracted or something like this. But then we could say, if one is too patient and never makes any effort, I'm just waiting, things, they'll work out, it'll be fine. And then we're just, yeah, I'm being patient. This is a virtue, something that should be cultivated. I'm just being patient. That doesn't work either. If we have this way in which we're just feel like that we're just waiting and being patient, and we're not noticing maybe the quality of the mind while we're waiting, there could be this way in which we're unknowingly cultivating this sense of, maybe the sense in which that our energy, kind of the sense of vitality, just drains out. The enthusiasm that we had leaves. Or maybe we're cultivating just this quiet aversion. Like, I don't want to pay attention to what's actually happening. So I'm just going to maybe abide in this puffy cloud of not really knowing, kind of like feeling foggy, or of not really being connected to our life, this way in which sometimes it can feel little, I don't know how to explain it very well. I've spent time doing this, just dull and not engaged and not very much energy, and feeling like, yeah, I think I don't want to do that. So there's this way in which we can be patient, but to notice the quality of the mind, so that the patient isn't just a way in which we're disconnecting and calling it patience. Instead, is there a time to not be applying so much effort, but instead to be able to say, okay, this is, I think what's needed here is not so much effort. Not to completely disengage, but to not be applying so much effort. And this often is hard to do. Sometimes we're just all on or all off. I'm not quite sure how to do something where we're engaged and connected, but not pushing. Just noticing the quality of the mind, what's happening here. Patience has a quality of spaciousness to it. This quality of like, things don't have to happen right now. There's a certain way in which we're trusting. It doesn't have to be fixed this moment. It doesn't have to be different this moment. There might be a time in which it's okay for it to be different, or maybe we feel like it would be much better for ourselves or for others to be different. But is there a way we can say, like, yeah, right now, it doesn't have to? And some of you have heard me talk about this way in which we can work with difficulties that arise using this acronym RAFT, RAFT. Tanya Weiser teaches about this. She came up with this initially. Recognize what's actually happening. Like, oh yeah, I feel impatient. I want something to happen. Allow. Can you just allow it to be there? Because it is there. And there's this way we can be subtly like, okay, if I turn my head, maybe it won't be there. No, it is there. Recognize, allow, feel in the body, feel maybe the restlessness. For some reason, I feel restlessness like often in my arms. There's a sense of like I kind of feel like I want to do something. And then here's T. There's a number of ways we could say it. T, trust that you don't have to fix it right now. Recognize what's happening. Allow it to be there as best you can. Feel in the body. Don't get stuck in the head, all the stories. Just feel in the body. For me, impatience does have this little like agitated feeling in my arms, and it has a kind of a tightness, a general constriction in my like upper chest, kind of this feeling. So trust that it doesn't have to change that moment. So there's this way in which practice requires this delicate balance of, some effort and patience. effort and patience. And often we don't think about how these go together. We think it's like, okay, just one, that I have to be patient when somebody else is holding me back. But instead it's a counterbalance to effort. And I appreciate so much that Sylvia Boorstein, she talks about patience as unglamorous courage. Unglamorous courage. Right? This courage to hang in there, not to completely disconnect. So, to say a little bit more about patience, it's not a quantifiable object. We kind of feel like, okay, we only have so much. My patience is running out. Or I don't have the patience for this, or something like this. It turns out patience is infinite. It's not a commodity. It's not something that we feel like we only have a certain amount. It's something that we can orient towards, and it's something that we can cultivate. Maybe in the same way, courage or loving kindness or something like this. These are just qualities we can cultivate. So we could say it's related to just simply non-reactivity. This way in which we often, we've probably have all heard this idea, we'll just count to 10, before you wanted to react to something that was unpleasant or uncomfortable. So it's this, just creating this little gap. So it's not reacting as best we can to what's happening. So not turning to blaming, not turning to anger, raging, and not despairing. But instead, can we, in some ways, count to 10? And that allows us to hold our difficulties in a more spacious way that feels more peaceful. And then with this spacious way that's a little bit more peaceful, then maybe we can see into something, what's causing the difficulty, instead of just, oh, it's because that person in the checkout line, they're rummaging around in their pockets or purse or something like this and can't find whatever they need to pay the bill or whatever it is, and meanwhile the line is backing up or something like this. There's this way in which we have this spacious mind is different than if we just start feeling impatient. A spacious mind, we can see, okay, this isn't going the way that I expected. But that's just because I have this idea in my mind, completely fabricated in my mind, about how things should be. This picture about how things should be. And things aren't that way. I talk about this often, because this turns out to be a ticket to so much more ease and freedom, is to recognize this gap between the way we think things should be and the way things actually are. And once we can just notice that, then we can loosen up this idea of like, oh yeah, I have this idea that everybody should be organized, or forgetting the time that we were disorganized came time to check out, or if it's somebody who maybe can't move quickly or something, recognize that may be us, right? There may be a time in which we're the one who is moving slowly for whatever reason. So this patience is about, making space, which allows us to not act out, but also maybe allows for some wisdom to show up. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more in a moment here. But I also want to say that patience also has this feeling of some perseverance, of just hanging in there. So it's this idea of like giving up a deadline, like, okay, this should have happened by now. I've been meditating regularly and I should be in the 28th jhana, or I should at least be awakened by now. These ideas that we have about what practice should be. It's about giving up a deadline, but not giving up. Just giving up the idea that things should happen at a particular pace that we have set. Or maybe we know somebody and we have this compare and despair happening, like, well, my friend, meditated 3 times and they've already completely changed their life, or I'm exaggerating. But whatever it might be, there's this way in which we might kind of there's this way in which we don't see clearly other things, other people. Social media certainly promotes this, and we might think like, oh, it should be this other way. So giving up a deadline, but not giving up. So also I want to say a few words about what patience isn't. Because there's this way in which we might feel like we're being patient, but we're not. There could be this numbing resignation, this checking out, but there could also be this gritting your teeth, kind of this growling, this and we feel like, okay, I'm waiting, but that's just cultivating aversion. That's just waiting with aversion. That's not patience. And patience isn't passivity either. It's this way in which it doesn't deny the difficulty that's being experienced, but it's this way in which it's rooted in respect and compassion. Respect and compassion for ourselves, for other people, and maybe for just the process. Like, things take time. Things take time. Changing our life, learning new patterns, being with difficulties, take time. Even though we don't want them to. It doesn't matter so much what we want. Or we could even say, maybe even the more we want them to be fast, the slower they take. Maybe some of you guys have heard this little story. It's a Zen story. It doesn't have to be a Zen story. That there's this person who decides that they want to become a monastic. So they go to the monastery, and they're going to dedicate their life to practice and meditation, and this is what it's going to be. So they go to the abbot of the monastery and say, well, how long will it take until I have some more ease and freedom? And the abbot says, well, I don't know, maybe 5 years. And the person's like, oh, well, what if I work really hard and really dedicate myself to practice, for some peace and freedom? And then the abbot says, oh, okay, in that case, 20 years. Right? There's this way in which we push and push, and then we're not seeing how we're flagellating ourselves and trying to make ourselves do things and feeling like, I'm those other people, if they'd only get out of the way and I should do this. But we're not seeing all this aversion in a way that other things that are getting cultivated when we don't have the sense of patience. So there's this way I talked about how can we cultivate it, or how is it, let's say this. Patience certainly is a balance to effort and energy for our practice, but it's also, I would say, an integral stepping stone to equanimity. And equanimity is an integral stepping stone to freedom, absolutely. Equanimity is, this balance and seeing the big picture. So there's this way in which this literally or figuratively counting to 10, having a little bit of space, so not being so reactive. It allows, so our choosing to not react allows this little pause. And in this pause kind of allows for some wisdom to show up. Maybe, for some clarity about what is the next course of action. But it's also this little pause also allows a certain amount of stability to grow. Instead of just this reactivity, opposite of that is some stability. And then in this stability, as this grows into equanimity. that real stable, this sense of balance and this sense of difficulty. So patience is related to equanimity. Maybe on the outside they look the same, but patience is where we're feeling the difficulty and we're intending intentionally to like, okay, I'm just gonna hold this space here. And maybe we're feeling the wind of the difficulty, we're feeling the force, and maybe we're getting a little bit off balance, but we're not reacting the way that we perhaps would have before we started practicing patience. Whereas equanimity has a little just more steadiness. It doesn't even get pushed around even a little bit. So patience is such an important, not only if you have an electronic gizmo that doesn't work right and you have to call and email and all these things that we try to do to fix them. So patience, like courage, is something that increases the more we do it. The more that we set our mind that direction to be with what's arising as best we can. So there's this lyric to a song that I heard so many years ago, decades ago, that has stayed with me all these years. It goes, I've worried, is it so that lessons of patience are learned slow? This idea, right, that we need patience to create patience. But this is how it works. It makes it easier and easier to do it the more we practice it. So, what are some ways we can practice? Maybe I'll say that mindfulness automatically helps support patience because we start to notice our impatience. We start to notice that agitation that we're starting to feel. And that can be a tremendous support, like, oh yeah, okay, impatience feels like this. And maybe we hadn't even noticed it before. Maybe we hadn't even noticed how we were standing there with our hand on our hip and, tapping our foot, when somebody is not doing or they're taking too long to do something. But here are some other things. Maybe to just consider, when are you patient? What are some things, some activities in your life in which you feel like you do have patience? Maybe you have some hobbies, something where you're willing to patiently do some activity, maybe something with your hands, or maybe there's family members or people in your life that you have tremendous patience for. Sometimes young ones, right? We recognize that they're still learning and we have patience for them. So bring to mind, when do you have patience? And then just have this little query, what is it that allows the patience there? There might be something that you're not even aware of. Maybe there's a feeling that you have. Maybe there's care or some respect, or maybe there's just a sense of, things don't have to have a particular outcome right now. It's okay to just be here. Or maybe have an image or a thought or something like that. It can be helpful to identify that because it becomes easier can you intentionally bring that to other situations in your life? This isn't a panacea that automatically everything you're going to become patient, but it's, why not work from our strengths, work from what is already those times in which we are patient. And then something we can do, if you have a big project that you're working on, there's a way, and we're often thinking oh my goodness, and then I have all this to do. I sometimes am doing this. I have this giant project, and sometimes I just feel like, oh my goodness, it's so much work. But instead, focus on what you've done. And I started to do this, and that's been fantastic. It's been really helpful. Oh yeah, okay, I did this little bit, and that was all right. That was fine. So why don't I just do that little bit again? And that gets further. So here's something to consider just in your life, just to orient the glass is half full. This way with a big project you have to do. Or there's this way in which maybe you could start a practice movement in the sense that if you do find that you are the one that people are waiting for, say, thank you for your patience. Just to acknowledge that, and then people start to maybe shift a little bit, like, oh yeah, well, we can be patient here. And then there's this way in which just bringing the word patience in just allows a little bit more ease and spaciousness. And who knows, one of those people later might be patient for you when you need them to be, or maybe they will be saying to you, thank you for your patience. And that will be helpful, like, oh yeah, I don't have to be impatient here. There's other things we can do. I don't want to maybe just give a long list of do this, do that, do this other thing. But maybe I'll end with a poem by Rosemerry Trommer. Of course. What would I do without Rosemerry Trommer? So this poem is called Lumbricus Terrestris. Lumbricus Terrestris by Rosemerry Trommer. I'll say this word again. Lumbricus Terrestris. This happens to be the Latin name for the earthworm. On a day when the world is weighty, dark, and dense with need, I want to be the earthworm that gives itself over to tunneling. Its every movement an act of bringing spaciousness. And when minutes feel crushed by urgency, I want to meet the world worm-like, which is to say, grounded, consistent, even slow. No matter how desperate the situation, the worm does not tunnel faster nor burrow more. It knows it can take decades to build fine soil. To whatever is compacted, the worm offers its good worm work, quietly bringing porosity to what is trodden, compressed. So often in my rush to repair, I end up exhausted. Let my gift to the world be my constancy, a devotion to openness, my willingness to be with what is. Let my gift to myself be patience as I tend what is dense and dark. Let my gift to the world be my constancy, a devotion to openness, my willingness to be with what is. Let my gift to myself be patience as I tend what is dark and dense, what is dense and dark. Lumbricus Terrestris. I just like saying that. So thank you for your patience during this talk. And I'll open it up to see if there's some questions or comments. Thank you. Anybody have anything they'd like to say?
Is it a similar feeling to know when we need patience and then to strive? Is it like a bodily feeling, can you feel it in your body, your mind, or is it two different feelings?
You mean knowing to strive versus knowing when to effort?
Yeah, like knowing if I need more patience or if I need to strive harder.
Yeah.
Is it the same kind of like feeling in the body to tell you, or is it a different kind of feeling?
Yeah, this is good. So it's both, maybe we could say a knowing, but what is the feeling? Yeah, So patience, right, has an openness and a spaciousness, like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to be here. But your question is, how do we know when to be patient and when to stop striving, when to stop pushing? Yeah, when to strive more. Do you have a sense, Matt?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's more obvious to me when I need to be more patient, because then I feel kind of like hyped up and I just need to like, maybe relax but I don't know about knowing knowing when I need to strive more. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. There's often, if I feel like when the striving is too much, there's a few qualities present usually, I would say. It's in my experience. One is there's a strong sense of, I need to be having a different experience. I need something different. So there's a strong sense of Diana has to have something different. And there's also a sense of, not only does it need to be different, whatever it is isn't okay, something particular has to happen, dang it. It has that kind of quality, like, all chairs should be blue, dang it, so I'm going to, I do something to make them all blue, and I'm not going to rest until that's done. Like there's this sense of this grayness is not okay, and things have to be different. So it's not only that they have to be different, but there has to be a particular outcome. And then often there's this real pushing there. And that's in contrast to, I think it could be really supportive if there were blue chairs. Yeah, I think that would actually brighten things up and bring the mood up, and it would help people to meditate better. Yeah, I wonder. I'm curious about this. Maybe I'll see if there's something to do about it. So there's not as much about Diana has to have something different. It's more like an idea that things can be different and applying effort.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been dealing with, I'll get really specific and then I'll pull out, but I've been changing phone carriers.
Can you
I've been changing phone carriers, and it's been a really arduous process, but I've noticed that some personalities it pays to be patient with, and some personalities it doesn't really pay to be, at least in the way you were talking. I mean, sometimes with either if somebody's bullying you or somebody is being stubborn, you have to push, I think, and you have to assert yourself.
Oh yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is, I think there are different qualities of patience depending on the situation that you're in.
Yep.
Because people will push you around.
Yeah. Patience is not passivity. Yeah. Patience is not passivity.
Yeah.
It's not letting people push us around. But it's interesting that you said it pays to be patient, and sometimes it pays to push. It's interesting that using this word pays, because it implies that, like, okay, how can I get to that thing fastest?
Yeah.
Which is fine, right? And you spoke about a particular activity, which is never, in my experience, has not been a pleasant thing to do. So, yeah, there's a way in which, thinking about like patience is also related to equanimity. So there's a way in which sometimes people are pushing, this is their job, their livelihood is dependent on how much, for sales or something like this. And is there a way that they can be pushing and we can just say, no, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm going to do this. No, thank you. We end up saying no, thank you a lot and just kind of staying here. So I don't know. I'm just offering this. Thank you. Does anybody else have a comment? Maybe we'll put that microphone over there for Shelley.
I just wanted to make the comment that I really liked when you said giving up a deadline but not giving up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I like this too. It's very helpful for me because sometimes I feel like giving up the deadline is giving up, right? The sense like, oh, if I can't have it by that time, I'm not going to do it. But just like, oh no, it's gonna let it unfold or be available when it is, instead of demanding that it be another time. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I think also it allows us to take the time and space to be present enough to be aware of what we have, how far we have come,
Yeah.
and be more patient to wait for what is to come and be grateful for what we have now.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That's a very good point, right? There's this way in which we feel like, oh, there's always something out there that we have to get or make or do or something like that. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you. Any other comments? Oh, maybe can you put the microphone just down?
In relations to your comments about energy earlier, I personally get a lot of energy from this desire for things to be different. Please tell me more about where else energy can come from.
Oh, love. Things that we love, right? We have energy for things that we love, right? That's the opposite of has to be different.
Yes, and for the things that we love, there's an element of we want to protect the things that we love. We want them to thrive. There's always like this kind of flux and change with how we sit in relations, even to the things that we love. At least that's how I relate to it. But I guess I'm looking for how you're thinking about love. How do you experience that?
Yeah, so love, so I'm using this one word, right, which has so many different meanings, but things that we care about or have respect and that we maybe honor or appreciate or, things like this that are meaningful, something like that. And so your question is that if it's not, so I'm not saying we don't change some things, right? Of course we do change things, but it's what's maybe like fueling it, and it's also like, is it fueling it because there's this strong sense of I have to prove myself, or a strong sense of this is terrible, and well, it's because, right, of course, we all put energy and make and do things, of course, but is it born out of, this is a problem, and whoever did this did it wrong, and I got to fix this to make it better, and I'm going to show everybody here's the best way to do it, and this kind of thing. And on the way, everybody's going to see how great I am at fixing this particular problem, right? That's very different than like, oh, wow, there's a lot of harm here. Or I could see where this actually could be supportive for some people to do things differently. Here, I'm going to create this so that there's less harm, or I could support other people in a different way. Does this make sense?
I think I'm hearing avoid aversion and the ego in terms of how you get energy. Those are the two things I'm hearing that might not be so helpful.
Yeah. And they do, the interesting thing, aversion and ego do provide a lot of energy. I mean, they really do. Yeah. But it works until it doesn't. It's one of those things, right? Then our life ends up getting filled up with aversion, which is not a life that ends up being so happy. And ego, then we have to bolster and protect, and it's exhausting. Thank you all. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for your patience. And I wish you a wonderful rest of the evening and safe travels home. Thank you.